5 after, let's get started. Hope everybody's doing okay. For those who are joining us for the first time, this is the community open hour. Basically, this is a time where we meet every week to talk about things that are happening within the SALT community. We do some housekeeping, and then we talk in depth about different topics that have been of interest to people lately. So for instance, today we'll be talking about the Tiamat SUP, as well as the advisory board planning we're doing. We have some other agenda topics set for the coming weeks. Community members are encouraged to submit topics if there's something on your mind, you have a question, you need help with a pet project, something you'd like to talk about, please send me those topic suggestions and I'll get them scheduled for an open hour. And then of course, you're encouraged to speak up. We've had, the past few weeks had some really good kind of free-flowing conversations. So speak up verbally, post in the chat. I'll make sure that anything that you say gets included in the conversation. And for those who don't know me, I'm Cassandra Ferris. I am the community manager here at SaltStack. So my job is basically to help the community and the SALT core team collaborate together more effectively, as well as help make life easier for our contributors. And we'll be talking about some of what we're doing to make that happen. So with that, we'll start with our lovely housekeeping items. We still have the newer Twitch stream. We're doing triage on Twitch streams on Tuesdays. That's a tongue twister. So feel free to join in. It can be interesting to just kind of see the process of what goes into the triage and how we decide how to go through that. So feel free to pipe in for that Twitch. And then of course, we do streams on research and development and test clinics, and then the open hour is streamed on Twitch. All of those streaming events are on the SALT community events calendar that if anybody needs a link to that, I can send it. As far as kind of core team focus this week, it's been a lot of just continued work on magnesium. We're getting closer to our dev done date. I mean, we're not quite there yet, but getting closer. And so working on that, as well as looking at some new SEPs that are out. And on a community standpoint, I'm really excited about this. So we have created, one of the things we set out to do this month was this release was to create a bot that when you make your first contribution to the SALT project, there's a bot that'll say, hey, thank you for your contribution. Here's some other helpful information that you might need to know. And it provides links to the contributor guide and the Slack and IRC, different channels to stay in touch with us. And so now anytime somebody submits their first thing to the project, they'll get that response in the comments on GitHub. We also have one that will let people know when they've, like, basically congratulations on your first PR. So just kind of to give you some acknowledgement and then get the conversation started and give you some resources while we start working through your issues or PRs that were submitted. So excited about that. That's something that Sage, Krill, Wayne and I have been working on. So thank you all for your help on that. And hopefully that'll give our new contributors some more information. Let's see, I know we've already talked about the PyTest thing, but we have switched to only PyTest, so that switch has been changed now. Some save the dates. So we did the PR jam back in a couple months ago, and we basically went through our backlog of all of our pull requests that we needed to address and work to burn them down, and we wound up making it through over half of the backlog. We're doing something kind of similar with documentation. We're going to be doing a docs jam. It'll focus on improving the documentation, and we're going to be doing that on October 7th. It'll be just a one-day thing, and similar to how we did the PR jam, we'll have documentation requirements out there for people to work on. You can select what you're going to work on, and there will be team members here for to help you out. And then we are going to likely have a keynoter, an external keynoter who helps with some of the Run the Docs initiative. So once I get that confirmed, I'll announce it for you all, but I'm excited to have somebody come in and do a little talk. If you are interested in attending the Docs Jam, we're going to be doing a setup on September 30th so that you have time to set up and get ready for the event. And then the last kind of agenda or housekeeping item is SaltConf 20 is a go. We are going to be virtual this year. The conference is going to be October 29th, basically going from 9 a.m. Mountain to like 5 p.m. Mountain. We'll have several different tracks. We're going to be using a platform called Hopin, so we'll be able to have networking areas and virtual booths and ways for you to interact with one another. One thing that we're likely to have it that will be basically a booth focused on how you can get involved. And so people who attend SaltConf and want to continue learning or want to get involved in the project can come there to learn about the working groups, the open hours, all the opportunities we have for people to become part of the community. The other thing about SALT Conference is we do have a call for speakers open. We're looking for talks about SALT, about the things you're doing, about what you've integrated with SALT. I am planning to reach out at least to our meetup speakers and have you all submit talk abstracts, but if anybody has a talk that they would like to give, please submit those proposals. The call for speakers is open for another week and a half. We will announce speakers at the end of September and we'll have a full SaltConf schedule out in early October. Any other housekeeping items or questions about housekeeping items? Nope. I guess one other thing is for people who may have missed this before, when these videos get posted on YouTube, they're now time-stamped as we touch each discussion item, so you can click right to the item you want, and those timestamps are cross-referenced in the open hour notes on the wiki. You can also find the agenda on YouTube video descriptions now, so hopefully makes it easier for people to find the particular open hours and topics they might want to review. And last week's open hour had a lot of things to review. We wound up spending almost 40 minutes on talking about the contributor guide and becoming new to SALT and how, areas that documentation lacked, all sorts of good stuff. Took all those suggestions, wrote them down there in the notes, and we're working through some of them. And one thing that we touched on briefly last week, and we're going to bring back up this week, is the Community Advisory Board. So we are in early stages of planning a Community Advisory Board. Basically, this is going to be a board that will help with things such as reviewing and owning SEPs, watching for some of the best practices, having technical influence and direction for the project, and then advising on work group captains. Those are kind of the broad roles and responsibilities so far that we've laid out for the advisory board. But we wanted to do a few different things, one of which was find out what you all would want from an advisory board. If there was somebody representing you, what would be your priorities, and then maybe talk about some other logistics and things around that. Who here has been part of an advisory board? No, nobody? All right, well, I can share my experiences, and I've been on a couple different advisory boards. One was for a nonprofit called Perscalis that did technical Network Plus and A Plus certifications for people who were newer immigrants to the country and lower income. It would do technical certification and training and then job placement, but as part of the advisory board, a lot of what we did in that case was help guide the direction of the curriculum. We helped guide some of the partnerships in the city, and as well as some of the events that we were doing. So not the same, but basically advisory boards exist to help lead a community and help kind of guide and direct them. But if I was a community member and I said, hey, I'm going to be representing you to an advisory board, what are your biggest priorities? What would you want the advisory board to be doing for you? I'm waiting for somebody to say better documentation, but.
I'd say better documentation. Yeah.
This is one of our recurring themes, better documentation. What else? I mean, are there things that you think that aren't being heard that you would like to have heard? Because that could be good communication. Yep, absolutely agree with that. Somebody put good communication in the chat. Let's elaborate that on good communication. So good communication, what does that look like? Is it specific channels? Is it the content of the communication? Is it the cadence? All of the above, none of the above? clear and accessible in a reasonable time frame. And is what good communication. And I'm going to guess that you're referring to things like the status of your PRs and your issues, as well as kind of big changes such as maybe date changes, release changes, that sort of thing. Like getting those into a good cadence. What about from a technical standpoint? What would you want an advisory board to be doing? Or does anybody have examples of how an advisory board has influenced a technical project? I know Wayne's been doing some research on that, so I might put you on the spot if that's okay. Oh, good point. Perhaps it would help to know what an advisory board is for. It's basically a volunteer group, and they exist to give advice and support to, a lot of cases it works with a nonprofit, but just to a community. It can contribute in a lot of different ways, so it could be focused on guiding the direction of the organization. It could be focused on helping make things happen more effectively, but basically it's a group that, supports strategy and supports a project organization. So for example, an advisory board could help guide the direction, could maybe propose a SEP or help guide the direction of a SEP. Sage or Wayne, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on advisory boards?
Yeah, go ahead, Wayne. If you can. So I as well have been on some advisory boards, but not in an open source volunteer fashion. Most of it's been for jobs that I've had in large corporations, some small. But they've all been very specific and had really set forth guidelines and goals and a focus. And so that's kind of where we're looking for this group as well. And so we're kind of at that, because we're at that beginning stage, it's also really exciting because we can kind of define this or even set forth how we're defining it by saying it's not going to do this, which is also helpful. And some of some of what we're trying to accomplish here is that we want to give the community a voice. And I think that putting an advisory board together helps propel that. And so we're just really interested to make that real. And then since we're in such the early stages, we also get to define that, which is just really exciting, I think. I think that that's an exciting time to be a part of a group that's forming and to really set forth that it gets to be something. And then of course, this will be an iterative process with this advisory board, because we of course are all about change, and that if we didn't do it right the first time, well, that's okay, we learned that. So we'll figure it out and make those changes as we go. But I think that it is going to be fairly exciting. Wayne, did you have anything to add?
And it would be made up of community members, and the people who would be on
Right.
it could be considered subject matter experts. So we would want,
Yeah.
broad representation. We haven't figured out how many members or anything, but it might look like we have somebody from like each of 10 different areas sitting on the advisory board. So networking has a voice, and Mac has a voice, and Windows has a voice. It's one way this could play out. And then they would, logistically meet on a regular basis, probably once a quarter, keep notes, keep logs, keep records, and report back to the community on what happens before and after the meetings.
Right. With the working groups, we've been a little more, I guess, open to how they're going to work for each focus that they have or goal that they have. And it's also new for us. So we've been kind of figuring that out because some of them work better with like a Kanban board or maybe a task board, and some do better with meeting notes. This one will definitely require some meeting notes to be captured. It will require some more hard and fast rules just because we think that that's probably better in this function so that it will have that focus and we'll be able to use it as a communication tool as well so that we can make sure that the broader audience that may not be on the advisory board but also has access to that communication and what's been going on. So we're going to be a little more prescriptive there. And I think that's going to be really good to also set that forth up front so that we're all on the same page.
And as we start to firm up the details more, we'll share those. We'll also be, if you are interested in being part of the advisory board, we're going to need members as well. So if you're interested in taking basically a leadership role within the SALT community, let me know. I have a feeling it's going to be, this is going to be an area where bandwidth and interest and excitement might outrank things like, you know, being super, super in-depth technical with SALT, because we want you to be able to help guide the direction. How will the advisory board relate to SALT Stack, the company? That's a very good question. I know it will meet with members of SALT Stack and share information. I am not sure how else yet, how they will relate to us.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a community run and really driven board, but they'll have access to the SALT Stack core team. We haven't actually defined that yet, just like Cassandra said, but that we'll work closely together as we get this started, and then we're going to define exactly what that looks like going forward, sort of depending on the focus as well. But it's definitely meant to be community driven.
Yeah, they'll definitely have influence. Good question. Any other questions about the advisory board? No? All right, well, in that case, we will move on to the next topic. But like I said, if you're interested in joining the advisory board, send me a message and we can at least keep you in the loop. And as we get the details worked out, we'll fill you in again, but just wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything big. I think that one thing that has come out of this conversation is that we'll need to make sure that when we actually lay out the proposal for the advisory board, we need to very clearly define what an advisory board is for those who are not familiar, and then talk about what the board will do. And now I lost my notes. Here we are. So on that note, we have been talking a lot about Tiamat. We are at a point now where there's a SEP about packaging SALT with Tiamat. So we are going to be talking about that SEP. I'll drop a link to it in chat. Bryce is the one who wrote the SEP, so he and David will be covering basically what the SEP is, what this does, and then answer your questions related to the SEP itself, as well as whatever we can answer related to Tiamat. Unfortunately, Tyler was not able to join us today. He had another commitment, or else he would be here because he's been kind of our resident Tiamat person on the Twitch streams and stuff. But with this, we'll give it to Bryce and let us know what you have.
Okay, so basically, motivation behind this is that when we go to make a new release, because all of the dependencies that we package along with SALT, like 0MQ and Amazon Linux has the most dependencies. But anyways, there's so many of them, and anytime any requirements change, it takes a while to find new source RPMs, source debs, stuff like that. that's what's been the main thing holding us back from releasing quickly. Also, with native minions on like Arista, Juniper type OSs, the native Python environment for those OSs is very limited. I think some of them are based off of very old OSs like Fedora 18 or 16. I can't remember which one. So anyways, with Mac and Windows, we package Python and all the dependencies all in one bundle, and those we can create quickly in like a couple hours, get them tested, and they're ready to go. So basically what this does is it makes us package Linux and other like router OSs, things like that, in the same way we do Windows and Mac, so that we can get them out the door in a timely manner. It also means that because any dependency change is just pip installed, we can easily run this in a pipeline. Eventually we want to get it on PRs, so you put in a PR, at the end of your PR, you have a package you could install on your machine and know that it's tested and good to go. The main point of packaging in the PR is so that when we do go to release, we simply tag and it's ready to go. It's out the door as soon as it's tested. So as fast as our pipeline can go, we can have packages. Any questions?
What platforms does it apply to?
So Mac and Windows are already, they're going to remain the same. Everything else will be Tiamat packages eventually, as soon as we can make sure they work for all use cases and thoroughly test them.
If I can add to what Bryce has been saying, I've been using Tiamat and its predecessor pop build for the native minions, and it's allowed us to do things which would have been excessively difficult. For example, most router switches vendors are still shipping Python 2.7. As Bryce said, some like the Core base OS, Fedora Core 18, the only languages they provide are the C locale and POSIX. And there's no hope of getting UTF-8 support on it. With using Tiamat, what we were able to do in Arista's case, for example, on something SOIL that went out of end of life, essentially back 2014, we were able to get Python 3.7, the support for UTF-8, so that we could have language in different locales. The difficulty with Tiamat was getting Python 3.7 onto the reference box, to the build box, essentially. That was where the delay. Once I had Python 3.7 on the build box, it was a breeze to basically build Salt for both 32-bit and 64-bit versions of Arista's firmware, and everything worked. The only difficulty we encountered was we tried using Python 3.6 because the UTF-8 support comes from POSIX locale, CPython, and it's in PEPs 538 and 540, which was saying Python 3.7 support got added. It was ported that had been backported to 3.6, but there were problems with the backport. And so we ended up using 3.7. The reason for wanting 3.6 was that's what's coming with CentOS 7 out of the box. But it was a breeze, simple, easy, everything worked straight away. And the Arista's case, not even a change to the regular Salt. I just had to get the tagged version of Salt, and along with the various other items like Napalm and PyEAPI for Arista, bundle them all up, and away it went. It was very quick and successful. I had previously been building using or in regular RPM environment for Arista, and it became exceedingly more and more difficult. I think at one point for Napalm, I had supported backported 80 packages that were needed to build 60 runtime, and with Tiamat, I just had to say Napalm, boom, and I was done. So it came out just as I was hitting this wall of trying to support that many packages. And I was able to use later versions as well because it's all self-contained rather than having to try and to get something that would fit on a Fedora Core 18 but still be modern enough before things started changing. So it was really quite a nice, simple, easy task to build things.
I also wanted to mention, so regular packages are going to have the PI files in there that can be modified as far as I understand. We're also going to have available a single binary that you just, same as any other of the Go binaries, you just run it. It's not meant for production use. It's more for like testing, stuff like that, but that'll also be a thing.
Yes, the performance in the cases for the native minion builds, we're using one directory, so everything's bundled into one directory. That saves us the, in a single binary, it's all compressed, and we have to decompress it to execute it. And that was introducing delay. Bundling it in a package where everything is located in the one directory, there was essentially no difference in performance between the regular packages and using Tiamat. It was essentially negligible, lost in the noise, maybe 1% or something like that. Any questions on using Tiamat? It will allow us to package quicker, faster turnarounds. It was always a pain with the other packaging methods that come with the OSs, be it RPMs or Debian, where having to support older versions. For example, we just got rid of Debian 8, but some of the last releases, there was backports required at the last minute for Debian 8 of items that had progressed on, but we still had to support Debian 8, and that were painful to say the least, especially setup tools to get things working. And with Tiamat based, everything is right there, usable, self-contained, and makes life a lot easier. More time, I lost 2 days on a weekend and backporting to Debian 8 to get that release out. And Tiamat, I'd be done in an hour. So it makes life a lot more convenient. And we should be able to get releases out of our new continuous integration, continuous deployment a lot quicker and easier.
What are the potential downsides or challenges that implementing Tiamat could produce?
We do have to keep up to date on CVEs on the 4 dependencies that we are using. However, it is a lot quicker to turn that around. In the past, we've had problems with CVEs on certain versions. Classic case example was Tornado, which was we had to do version 4.2.1 because of the CVE. And so we had to supply Tornado, that version, even though the operating systems were supplying earlier versions still with the CVEs in them. At least this way, we're going to be able to address those a lot quicker if a CVE does occur. So we have to monitor dependencies a bit more.
Another thing is for ARM64 packages on like Ubuntu 2004, where there's not a lot of other dependencies required. You used to be able to just install the regular architecture independent debs. Those will now become architecture dependent. So to support ARM, you either have to pip install or we're going to have to start providing ARM64 packages.
Does anybody have any questions, input, feedback on the step so far? Okay, well, as always, you are welcome to give your feedback and your opinions and input, ask questions about the SEP. We'll keep sharing it. We'll keep everybody updated as it kind of moves through the process and let you all know what's happening. And I believe, yes, so that's our last formal agenda item. We have about 20 minutes left, so what kind of questions or comments or what does anybody want to bring up? This is open time. I know the past couple weeks we actually haven't had a lot of open question and discussion because the conversations about new contributors and some other things had continued right up till the end. Okay, nobody has any questions or input or anything. So in that case, we can call it a day. And thank you all for joining me. As always, if you have open hour topic suggestions, let me know. I know we had a request for a roadmap about some of our big features, and we do have that on the agenda for probably September 24th. I'm hoping that Mo or somebody can join us for that open hour to give us that overview. So keep an eye out for that. Open hour agendas continue to get published on Tuesdays, and always willing to hear other suggestions for things you might want to talk about, topics you might want to discuss. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good rest of the day and rest of the week, and let me know if I can help you with anything. Bye.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.